Live the Sunday talk show here on the Arise News channel. With me, I still have Dr. Nnameka Obiariri, investment banking executive, Achike Chude, a public affairs analyst, as well as Jide Ologun, a legal practitioner. While we're still waiting to establish connection with our analyst who is out there in Dakar, Senegal, let's move on quickly to the next subject of the day. In a move to further liberalize the foreign exchange market, the Central Bank of Nigeria has lifted exchange rate restrictions for international money transfer operators. The restriction was previously announced in September 2023 and mandated IMTOs to quote rates within an allowable limit of minus 2.5% to plus 2.5% around the previous day's closing rate of the Nigerian foreign exchange market. Under the latest regulation, IMTOs are now granted the flexibility to quote exchange rates for Naira payout to beneficiaries based on the prevailing market rates. The Central Bank of Nigeria also prohibited banks from operating international money transfer services, while fintech companies are not allowed to obtain approval for IMTOs. Earlier in the week, the CBN had required that banks whose current NOPs exceeded 20% short and 0% long had to bring them within the prudential limit by February 1, 2024. It also directed banks to maintain adequate stocks of high-quality liquid foreign assets, such as cash and government securities, in each significant currency. Nigeria's President Bola Tinubu has also inaugurated a 37-man tripartite National Minimum Wage Committee with a directive to its members to ensure their decisions are firmly rooted in social justice and equity. The president, who was represented by Vice President Kashim Shettima, stated this yesterday while inaugurating the tripartite committee at the council chambers of the State House, Abuja. Tinubu told the committee members that our objective should be to surpass the basic social protection floor for all Nigerian workers, considering the sustainable payment capacity of each tier of government and other employers or businesses. Well, Dr. Muda Yusuf joins me now to have a go at those key decisions by the Central Bank of Nigeria on new Forex measures and the inauguration of a minimum wage committee by President Tinubu. Dr. Yusuf is Director, Center for the Promotion of Private Enterprise and a former Director General of the Lagos Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Good to see you again on This Day Live, Dr. Muda Yusuf. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abati.
Well, the CBN has been quite forthcoming with quite a number of measures to assert regulatory control, to return to orthodox monetary policy practices, and also to stabilize the Forex regime. I've cited only one report relating to export proceeds. With regard to international money transfer services, quite a number of conditions have been rolled out. These exporters are supposed to, within 90 days or 180 days for non-oil exporters, 90 days for oil exporters, to pay into domiciliary account, export domiciliary accounts within that range. Also, those who want to get involved in international monetary transfer services are required to have a minimum cash deposit of $1 million, an application fee of 10 million naira. And then also, they are required to fill all kinds of documents with regard to NFX, with regard to declaration of DOM accounts, and if anybody violates any of these rules, then of course they will be sanctioned, including being kept out of the foreign exchange market. The CBN says part of the reason is to encourage the ease of doing business, but isn't this additional burden for exporters? Another measure that the CBN has announced has to do with import duty, whereby it has increased the foreign exchange rate for import duty to be paid by importers. Now, quite a number of people, including licensed customs agents, who are preparing to protest have said that, no, this amounts not just to double jeopardy, it will amount to a tragedy for importers. Well, you have been involved in the promotion of enterprises and trade. So is it double jeopardy with import duty? Is it, additional burden for exporters? And would that either promote exports, encourage business, export business, or further discourage investments in that direction? Let's start with those two items. There are others.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Abati. Quite a long list that you have rolled out there. Well, all the things that the CBN has been doing, I think, focus on trying to stabilize the market. Although the challenges remain, the environment is still extremely very volatile, which continues to be a major source of concern, for businesses. Now, concerning the issue of the benchmark exchange rate for the computation of import duty, in the international trade environment, generally even in the economic environment, volatility is not a particularly good thing. Uncertainty can also be a major challenge. Between June and now, we have seen quite a number of changes in the benchmark exchange rate for the computation of import duty. And that creates a whole lot of challenges. Secondly is the issue of the cost and the competitiveness of imports and some critical inputs for production. Now, as of June, the benchmark exchange rate was 422. Today, it's now 1,413. So that means that, you are talking about over 200% increase. This is in addition to the challenges of FX itself, because if you are importing anything, you have to procure it through the foreign exchange markets. Of course, there's issue of the depreciation that the citizens and importers and producers are contending with. So it's a major issue. The shock on the businesses are quite immense. And my view is that I think it would be nice to have a rethink, especially with respect to the import duty computation exchange rate benchmark, because of the challenges that already exist, in the economy, both for consumers, both for producers, both for those in services sector. Secondly, is the challenge of the effectiveness of the date. Each time you have this change in the portal about the exchange rate, it takes immediate effect. And that is, contrary to what happens generally in the fiscal policy environment. In the fiscal policy environment, even under this administration, we have had a review of effective dates to give importers and economic players enough time to transit to a new policy regime. But with this exchange rate thing, it takes immediate effect. Even for those who have almost completed their import transaction, to the extent that you have not moved your cargo out of the port, you are caught in the web. So the effective date, I think, should be a lot more liberal. It should be a lot more investment friendly. At least it should give minimum of 2 months for effective policy, because the import cycle is between 2 to 3 months. So we should accommodate that in the policy process. So the timing, the effective date is one thing. Then the issue of the rates and the effect on the cost of production, the effect on inflation is also another thing. So I think we should have a rethink. We should, minimize, the volatility in that space, so that at least the citizens and producers can have some reprieve, and they can also plan. We need to also address the issue of the volatility. Now, on the issues of the IMTO, exporters, and so on, the financial sector generally is a highly regulated sector. And the whole idea is to avoid abuse. Because what we have seen over time is the high level of speculative activities. And financial sector players are supposed to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. But I think from the vantage points of the central bank, they must have seen that there are some practices going on within the system, which I think has necessitated these new policies. Because the whole idea is to ensure that the players in the market should not also become speculators in the market. I think that is what informed the whole idea of reviewing some of these prudential guidelines, the net open position, the involvement of banks and fintechs in IMTO activities and so on. I think for me, that is in order to ensure that we have some more sanity in the space, because speculative activities is playing a major role in this Forex ecosystem. So I think it's a step in the right direction. And what the CBN has also done about removing the benchmark between the IMTO rates, that is the rate at which this foreign exchange comes through these autonomous sources, and the official rate, I think that is also a good thing, so that you remove impediments to inflow of foreign exchange from autonomous sources into the foreign exchange market. That for me is a welcome development. The barriers need to be removed, which is what the CBN has done, and that will allow whoever has any legitimate inflows that needs to come into the economy to come in freely without any encumbrances, except for a few documentations here and there. Because what has happened before now is that a lot of transactions are taking place offshore. The economic activities are taking place here. The transactions in terms of dollar naira is taking place outside the country. So this will help to remove those barriers. But in all of this, we should not submit totally to market forces or to free market. We need to define boundaries. I'm talking now about the commitment to the convergence between the official rate and the parallel market rate. Because the parallel market environment is an ungoverned space. We should not, consistently and rigidly commit to ensuring convergence at all costs. Because the shock on the system is enormous. I mean, look at what happened within the last 1 week. The official rate was around 900, 950. Suddenly, it dropped to 1,400. And you can imagine the shock waves that has generated and triggered within the entire economy. We're now witnessing another round of hyperinflation. So I think we need to be extremely very cautious. We need to recognize the reality of imperfections in the market.
Well,
and to ensure that we don't completely float the currency. I think these are things we need to watch out for.
Well, Dr. Yusuf, talking about, the parallel market and the official market, one of the things that the CBN did was to give the deposit money banks a deadline of February 1, 2024, to offload the excess stocks, Forex stocks that they have. And some people have been jubilating that it was because of that you had, that closure, that closeness between the parallel market and the official market, and that is good for the currency. But the question is, for how long would that have effect? And there are persons who are saying the thing to do is to go after those politicians who collect money at the end of the month from federal allocation and then go to the black market to create distortions. What can the CBN do about such persons, if indeed the allegation that that's part of the problem is true?
Well, some of these things also border on the transparency around the management of government finances. Because there is a trend, although we need some further empirical studies to determine the degree of correlation. But each time there's a release of the FAC allocation, it has a way of exerting pressure on the exchange rate, particularly in the parallel market. And in the parallel market, there are all manner of demands, some of them originating from sources that are not that legitimate. So that space is not a properly governed space. So I think that is the responsibility of the anti-graft agencies to ensure that whatever resources are in the coffers of government are not finding their ways into, the foreign exchange market for purposes of, for whatever, because quite a number of illegitimate transactions are taking place in that market. And we need to bring some sanity to that space. And that is why I was cautioning, because the official rate was around 900. It is not as if it is the parallel market rate that dropped to the level of the official rate. What we are dealing with now is that the official rate has been further depreciated to level up with the parallel market rate. And that is impacting significantly and seriously on the economy, on prices, on cost of production. Check the prices within the last few days. You'll be shocked at how suddenly prices have jumped up. So that is why I'm saying that we need to be careful not to submit to complete flotation of the currency, especially in the official window, because the damage from what we are seeing will be enormous. We should guide it, we should manage it, because we don't have the structure to ensure complete flotation of a currency. There are still a lot of imperfections in the economy. There are still a lot of imperfections in the foreign exchange market itself. And to the degree of that imperfection, government should guide the market, government should manage the rate, so that we avoid some of these frequent shocks on the economy. Because right now, cost of production, cost of energy, cost of a lot of things are going up just because of this sudden move in the official window. So I think we need to be a lot of cautious.
Okay,
and we need to define boundaries of market principles.
Yeah, Dr. Yusuf, when you say, we should not just float the naira, the government of the day uses the word manage floats. When you say, let's address the structure, what exactly are you suggesting? Do we go back to the old practice of government fixing the exchange rates, or the old days of dual exchange rate allowed even by government itself?
Now, the point I'm making is that there is no perfect market anywhere in the world, not even in America. These are even markets that are even much more developed. So the point I'm making is that we should manage it in a way that we don't surrender completely to flotation. And that is what we mean by guided flotation. Managed float. Even the government uses the term managed float. But when you have a sudden collapse of both the official and the parallel markets, the impact on the economy is very severe, because in all of this, we should not just be looking at the financial markets. We should worry about the social consequences of some of these actions. We should worry about even the political consequences for those who are in government, those who are elected officials. So economic management is not just only about the economic indicators. It's also about social indicators. It's about welfare. It's about issues of development. All these variables should be taken into account. And we should have a consensus around this, possibly even an ideological consensus on how we manage, this system between complete flotation and complete administrative allocation. We should be able to find a middle ground.
Okay, Dr. Yusuf,
given the imperfections in this economy.
Dr. Yusuf, well, the naira has gone through a bout of devaluation. But what options are available beyond your recommendation? Should the Nigerian government go to the IMF, get IMF backup, support, so as to restore confidence in this economy, so as to boost investor confidence? Do you think going to IMF for support will be a way out?
No. I will not support that at this stage. First of all, let me say that the government is generally on the right path. But we need to fine-tune policies. That is the basic thing that I'm talking about. If you are running with a policy, it's always good to, pause occasionally, go back to the drawing board, do a proper impact analysis, particularly on the social outcomes of these reforms. I keep saying it. Economic management, at the end of the day, is about human beings. So if the social cost is getting too high, we need to step back and see how we manage it. Because economics is a social science, it's about people. And sometimes you cannot accurately predict outcomes. Sometimes your assumptions may collapse midway, which means that you need to review it. So the fundamentals the government is already addressing. The fundamentals of backward integration, the fundamentals of ensuring that we rely less on importation of petroleum products, the fundamentals of ensuring that we scale up our production of oil outputs. These are very important fundamentals, which ultimately will help to stabilize the currency. We have also seen some progress with regard to fiscal consolidation. The outlook for fiscal deficit is looking fairly good. The fiscal deficit is not likely to be as high as it used to be. The ways and means financing by the CBN is not likely to be as high as it should be, or as it used to be. If you look at the data now, the ways and means finances has dropped significantly to, I think, around 5 trillion or so. It used to be over 30 trillion. So these are fundamentals that the government is putting in place. But while we are doing that, we need to review some of the extant policies to ensure that the impact on the citizens don't continue to be difficult. Because you need to carry the people along in the process of a reform process. So that is why we need to, get the CBN to look at these things closely and look at how we can minimize the volatility. How many economic or how many investors can stand the kind of volatility we are seeing in the foreign exchange market? Well, the volatility is too much. Over 1 month, you see rates changing 5, 6 times and so on.
Incidentally, Dr. Yusuf, the Senate Committee on Banking and Finance and, Insurance has invited the CBN governor to appear before it on Tuesday at 3 p.m. Hopefully, some of these issues that you have, outlined will come up in the course of that interaction with the Senate Committee on Banking. But let's talk quickly about another important subject that I introduced earlier, which is the decision to set up a 37-person committee to review the national minimum wage and come up with a new national minimum wage, against the background of the fact that the Minimum Wage Act of 2019, according to its provisions, the last minimum wage, which was not even implemented by most of the states of the Federation, 30,000 naira as minimum wage per month, will expire sometime this month, I think by February 24, so maybe February 19 or thereabouts. So March. So there is need for a new national minimum wage. We've been talking about implementation of 30,000 naira. With inflation rate where it is, what will be the realistic new national minimum wage? And why do we have to keep going through this rigmarole?
Well, I think the underlying factors has to do with the macroeconomic conditions. Because the biggest enemy or the worst enemy of salary earners, of fixed income earners, of pensioners is inflation. Because of the massive erosion of the value of their earnings. That, for me, is the biggest problem that we are dealing with. Because what we are dealing with now is like a moving target. We were discussing 30,000 minimum wage. Some of the states have not even been able to implement it. 30,000 naira today is less than $20. So how can any human being even survive on that? And you can see the implication of that for social stability. So it has to be a multidimensional thing. The macroeconomic issues has to be addressed, and I believe the government is addressing that. But that may not happen very quickly. That is why we need to address the issue of the nominal wage. while we also keep in mind how to ensure that the value of the currency do not further depreciate, because it's eroding the value of the income. Pensioners now, you sympathize with them. We're even talking about reviewing wages. Nobody else is talking about the pensioners, whose income have been fixed for sometimes for 10 years ago, for almost 10 years. I've seen retired professors who are earning just about 200,000, 170,000 as pension. What can that buy today? So dealing with the macroeconomic fundamentals is essential. Reviewing the wage at least to bring it, to a level that you can regard as a living wage. I think that for me is also important. I may not be able to give a figure, but we are now in the country of today, 100,000 now, it's not up to $100. That is how bad the situation has come. So that should give us an idea of the kind of thing we should be looking at. And luckily, the states, the local governments, and the federal are now getting more revenue as a result of these reforms. So I think they're in a much better position to be able to, offer a much better wage to workers. But more fundamentally, is to address the macroeconomic issues, to address the issues of government funding the social sector of the economy, providing education, providing health, providing transportation, so that the pressure of all those expenses will be removed from the meager wages of the workers. That is how it is done in many other parts of the world. If you go to some of these countries, you can travel around the whole city just with some peanuts. Well, because the government has heavily subsidized transportation.
Well, on that note,
subsidized health and subsidized education.
On that note, Dr. Muda Yusuf, I'd like to thank you very much for joining us on This Day Live, the Sunday Talk Show today. Thank you very much indeed.